She entered the room marked "No Entry" and met the one who'd been waiting for her. The quantum curator's secret. Zoe Elliott had spent 3 years cataloging the forgotten treasures in the Metropolitan Science Museum's basement archives, and not once had she noticed the door. Yet there it was, a sleek metal panel nestled between 2 towering artifact storage units, bearing a simple red sign, "No entry." "That's not on any of the blueprints," she murmured, adjusting her glasses and checking her digital inventory tablet. The basement level was a labyrinth of storage rooms and climate-controlled vaults, but Zoe prided herself on knowing every inch of it. This door was an anomaly. She glanced at her watch. 11:42 p.m. The museum had closed hours ago, and she was alone completing the quarterly inventory, a task her colleagues avoided, but one she secretly enjoyed. The quiet hours gave her time to appreciate the overlooked artifacts that rarely made it to the exhibits upstairs. Security didn't mention any restricted areas down here, she said to herself, approaching the door. It had no visible handle or keypad, just a smooth metallic surface that seemed to shimmer under the fluorescent lights. Common sense told her to note it in her report and continue with inventory. But Zoe hadn't become an archivist because she lacked curiosity. She placed her palm against the door, surprised when it felt warm to the touch. The door slid open silently. "Hello," she called, peering into the space beyond. "Security. I found an unmarked room down here." Instead of darkness, she found a brightly lit laboratory filled with equipment she couldn't identify. Holographic displays hovered in midair, showing complex equations and 3D models that rotated slowly. The room hummed with energy. And sitting at a desk in the center, looking entirely unsurprised by her entrance, was a man. "You're 4 minutes early," he said, checking a peculiar watch with multiple dials. "That's interesting." Zoe froze in the doorway. "I'm not supposed to be here at all. This door isn't on any museum plans." The man stood and smiled. He was tall, with deep brown skin and curly black hair streaked with premature silver at the temples. His eyes were amber, almost luminous in the strange light of the lab. "That's because this room doesn't technically exist yet," he said, extending his hand. "Edison Park, quantum physicist, and you're Zoe Elliott, the museum's most dedicated archivist." She hesitantly shook his hand, startled by the warmth of his touch and the fact that he knew her name. "How do you know who I am? And what do you mean the room doesn't exist yet?" Edison gestured to a chair opposite his desk. "Please sit. I've been hoping you'd find me, though I calculated it wouldn't happen until 11:46. Your curiosity is even stronger than the probability model suggested." "You're not making sense," Zoe said, but she sat anyway. Something about Edison's calm demeanor kept her from feeling threatened, despite the strangeness of the situation. Is this some kind of secret research project the board approved without telling staff? Not exactly. Edison waved his hand, and the holographic displays shifted to show a timeline. "I'm working on a temporal research project studying quantum entanglement across time periods. To put it simply, I'm from about 30 years in your future." Zoe laughed. "Right. And I'm Marie Curie." "Your skepticism is healthy," Edison replied with a smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes. "But the Metropolitan Science Museum becomes the home of the Temporal Research Institute in 2039. I'm using a quantum anchor point to temporarily stabilize a workspace in your time." "Prove it," Zoe challenged, crossing her arms. Edison reached into his desk and pulled out a newspaper. "Tomorrow's headline: There's going to be a breakthrough in nuclear fusion, announced at 9:32 a.m. The stock market will respond dramatically." Zoe examined the paper, noting the date, indeed tomorrow's, and the headline about fusion energy. This could be faked. "Fair point." Edison reached into his pocket and pulled out an antique pocket watch. "This is currently in your apartment, sitting in a glass case on your bookshelf. It belonged to your grandfather, William Elliott, who gave it to you when you completed your master's degree in historical preservation and archival science. Zoe's breath caught. The watch in his hand was identical to her most treasured possession, down to the small dent on the left side where her grandfather had once dropped it. How could you possibly know that? Edison's expression softened. Because in my time, you're famous. Dr. Zoe Elliott, pioneer of temporal artifact preservation. Your methods for cataloging and preserving historically significant items across temporal shifts are the foundation of my work. He hesitated. And because I've studied your life's work extensively, I've always wanted to meet you. A flush crept up Zoe's neck. You're saying I become important. Me? The basement dweller who talks to ancient artifacts more than people. Precisely because of that, Edison said. Your attention to detail and your respect for history makes you see patterns others miss. Zoe stood abruptly and paced the room, examining the equipment. Some of it looked vaguely like advanced versions of technology she recognized. Other pieces were completely foreign. Let's say I believe you, which I don't, not entirely. Why are you here? Why now? Edison's expression grew more serious. There's a temporal anomaly forming around certain artifacts in this museum. Items that don't belong in this time period have somehow been integrated into your collection. I'm here to identify them before they cause a paradox. What kind of artifacts? Zoe asked, her archivist instincts immediately engaged despite her disbelief. That's what I need your help to determine, Edison said. My instruments can detect temporal displacement, but I need someone who knows this collection intimately to help identify which items don't belong. And the no enteri sign. Edison laughed, a rich sound that seemed to fill the strange room. Temporal protocol. It's supposed to discourage accidental discovery, but I had a feeling it might have the opposite effect on you. You wanted me to find this place, Zoe realized. I calculated that you would, Edison corrected. There's a difference. Quantum probability suggested you'd discover this room eventually. Your curiosity is a mathematical certainty. That's, Zoe searched for the word. Flattering. Creepy. I'm not sure which. Perhaps a bit of both, Edison admitted. But I need your help, Zoe. The temporal stability of this anchor point only lasts for another 72 hours in your timeline. After that, I'll be pulled back to my own time. Something in his voice made Zoe pause. You sound like you don't want to go back. Edison's gaze met hers, and the intensity in his amber eyes made her breath catch again. Let's just say the opportunity to work with the legendary Zoe Elliott in her early career is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, even for a temporal physicist. Before Zoe could respond, an alarm sounded from one of the holographic displays. Edison moved quickly to examine it. Security sweep, he explained. Your security system does regular scans. This room is shielded, but we should be careful. If they detect unusual energy signatures, they might investigate. This is insane, Zoe said, but she was already moving toward the door. I should report this. You could, Edison agreed, but then you'd never know if I was telling the truth about your future, about the incredible work you're going to do. He hesitated. About us. Us. Zoe's eyebrows shot up. There's an us in this scenario. Edison's smile returned, enigmatic and charming. That depends on what happens in the next 72 hours, doesn't it? History, or rather, future history, suggests we make quite the team. The alarm stopped, and Edison relaxed slightly. Will you help me, Zoe? Will you help me find the displaced artifacts? Zoe knew she should leave, report the unauthorized lab, call security. It was the responsible thing to do. But the historian in her, the curator who had dedicated her life to preserving the past, couldn't resist the allure of the future standing right in front of her. I have conditions, she said firmly. You tell me everything. How you got here, what these artifacts are, and why they're dangerous. No more cryptic future talk. Edison nodded. Agreed. And I want proof. Real proof that you're from the future. I'll provide what I can without risking additional temporal contamination. Zoe took a deep breath. Then yes, I'll help you. But if I think for 1 second that you're lying, or that this is some elaborate prank, I'm calling security faster than you can say temporal anomaly." Edison extended his hand again. "Deal." As their hands met, Zoe felt a strange tingling sensation, as though the very atoms in her body were recognizing something her conscious mind couldn't yet comprehend. For a brief moment, she thought she saw golden threads of light connecting their fingers, but when she blinked, the vision was gone. "What happens now?" she asked, trying to ignore the lingering warmth where their hands had touched. Edison's eyes twinkled with excitement, and something else, something that looked remarkably like hope. "Now," he said, "we make history, or rather, we preserve it." Outside the mysterious room, the Metropolitan Science Museum continued its quiet nighttime existence, unaware that in its forgotten basement, time itself had just folded into a new configuration, and two people who should never have met were about to change each other's worlds forever. Entangled across time. 6 months had passed since the mysterious door in the museum basement had vanished, taking Edison and his laboratory with it. For Zoe, the 3 extraordinary days they'd spent together hunting temporal anomalies felt increasingly like a dream, one that had left her career transformed, but her heart oddly hollow. The newspaper headline about the fusion breakthrough had happened exactly as Edison predicted. The displaced artifacts they'd identified, 7 items ranging from a seemingly ordinary wristwatch to an ancient-looking stone tablet with impossibly precise mathematical formulas, had been quietly removed from the museum's collection and placed in a special storage vault that Zoe alone managed. Now, instead of languishing in the basement, she had been promoted to head a new Special Collections division, with her own office overlooking the museum's grand atrium. Her colleagues attributed her sudden rise to her discovery of historically significant technological anomalies in the collection, though none knew the truth. "Dr. Elliot," her assistant's voice came through the intercom. "The board members are waiting in the conference room for your presentation on the new exhibit." "Thank you, Julian. I'll be right there." Zoe gathered her materials, pausing to touch the antique pocket watch she now wore on a chain around her neck, not her grandfather's, which remained in its case at home, but its perfect twin that Edison had somehow possessed. "You'll know when to use it," he had told her in their final moments together, pressing it into her palm as the golden light around his lab began to flicker and distort. "When the time is right, you'll understand." So far, the watch had done nothing but tell time, albeit with perfect accuracy. Whatever secret it held remained locked inside its mechanism. The board meeting went smoothly, with Zoe's proposal for a new exhibit called Innovations Out of Time receiving unanimous approval. It would feature replicas of the anomalous artifacts they'd found, presented as visionary concepts ahead of their time, a description that was literally true, if not in the way the board understood. As the members filed out, the museum director, Dr. Reginald Hammond, lingered behind. "Brilliant work as always, Zoe," he said, his gray eyebrows lifting above his glasses. "Though I must admit, since that inventory night 6 months ago, sometimes I hardly recognize you. You've become quite the visionary yourself." Zoe offered a small smile. "Just seeing things from a new perspective, Dr. Hammond." "Indeed." He paused. "By the way, maintenance finally figured out what was causing those power fluctuations in the basement. Apparently, there's some kind of unusual electromagnetic field down there. They're bringing in specialists next week." Her heart skipped. "Specialists? What kind?" "Some physics team from Meridian Technologies." He shrugged. "All very technical. Nothing for you to worry about." As soon as Hammond left, Zoe rushed back to her office and pulled up information about Meridian Technologies on her computer. The company didn't exist, at least not yet. "Edison," she whispered, her fingers trembling as she pulled out the pocket watch. For the first time since he'd given it to her, the second hand had stopped moving. The watch face now displayed a sequence of numbers that looked suspiciously like coordinates. That night, after the museum closed, Zoe returned to the basement, following the coordinates to a section of wall between 2 storage units, Nothing visibly marked it as special, but when she held up the pocket watch, the second hand began to move again, rotating counterclockwise. "Here goes nothing," she murmured, and pressed the watch against the wall. A seam of golden light appeared, widening into a doorway. Beyond it was not Edison's laboratory, but what appeared to be a rooftop garden overlooking a futuristic cityscape. And there, silhouetted against a sunset that painted the sky in impossible colors, stood Edison Park. He turned, his amber eyes widening. "Zoe, you figured it out sooner than I calculated." She stepped through the doorway, her heart pounding. "You left me clues, remember?" "I did, but the probability model suggested it would take another 3 months for you to piece them together." His smile was warm with admiration. "You continue to defy mathematical prediction." "Where are we? When are we?" Zoe asked, looking out at the city. Familiar landmarks stood alongside sleek structures that defied conventional architecture. "New York, 2054. My time." Edison approached her, stopping just short of reaching out. "But we don't have long. This connection is temporary. A quantum bridge I've been working to stabilize since I returned. The specialists coming to the museum next week." Edison nodded. "My team. We're establishing a more permanent anchor point, but there are complications." "What kind of complications?" Edison's expression darkened. "Dr. Vivian Thornton, my former mentor. She's discovered what we did, identifying and removing the temporal anomalies. She believes they should have remained, that they were meant to create a specific future timeline." "Her timeline," Zoe guessed. "Exactly. She's been seeding technologies throughout history, trying to accelerate certain developments. The artifacts we remove were part of her plan. Zoe processed this, so she's coming to put them back." "Yes," Edison confirmed. "And if she succeeds, it could create a cascading temporal event that would essentially rewrite your future, our past, erasing your timeline. And potentially yours as well, at least as you would have lived it." Edison finally reached for her hand. "I couldn't let that happen without warning you. Without seeing you again." The touch of his fingers sent that same strange tingling through her body, and this time Zoe was certain she saw golden threads of light briefly connecting them. "You feel it too," Edison said softly. "Quantum entanglement at the cellular level. Our particles recognize each other across timeline boundaries. Is that your scientific way of saying we're connected?" His smile was both sheepish and sincere. "In my defense, it's a very accurate metaphor." A small alarm sounded from a device on Edison's wrist. "The bridge is destabilizing. You'll be pulled back to your time soon." "How do we stop Thornton?" Zoe asked urgently. "We don't stop her. We redirect her." Edison quickly moved to a table covered with equipment and picked up what looked like an ordinary stylus. "This contains a quantum algorithm that will reconfigure her temporal device. It won't prevent her from creating bridges between times, but it will limit what can pass through them to information only, not physical objects. So she can observe but not interfere." "Precisely." The golden doorway began to flicker, and Zoe felt a pulling sensation. "It's happening already," Edison said, pressing the stylus into her hand. "When Thornton's team arrives, you need to get close enough to insert this into their main calibration unit. It looks like a silver case with blue lights." "And then what?" "And then," Edison hesitated, "then we wait. If it works, I should be able to establish a stable connection between our times." The pulling grew stronger, and Zoe clutched at Edison's arm to keep from being drawn back through the doorway. "And if it doesn't work?" Instead of answering, Edison pulled her close and kissed her, a desperate, hopeful gesture that sent waves of golden light spiraling around them, temporarily stabilizing the connection. "That's not an answer," Zoe said breathlessly when they parted. "It's the only one I have right now." Edison pressed his forehead to hers. "Trust the quantum entanglement, Zoe. Some connections transcend time." The doorway pulsed, and Zoe felt herself being inexorably drawn backward. "I'll find you," she promised, their fingers slipping apart as the golden light engulfed her. She landed hard on the basement floor, the stylus clutched in her hand, and the taste of Edison's kiss still on her lips. The following week passed in a blur of preparation. Zoe carefully studied the basement's layout, installed her own surveillance cameras, and researched everything she could find about quantum physics, which wasn't much, given that most of what she needed to know hadn't been discovered yet. When Thornton's team finally arrived, Zoe was ready. She introduced herself as the collections director and insisted on accompanying them, claiming concern for the artifacts stored nearby. Dr. Vivian Thornton was not what Zoe had expected. Rather than the villainous mastermind she had imagined, Thornton was a petite woman in her 60s with kind eyes and a grandmotherly demeanor that instantly put everyone at ease. "It's so lovely of you to take an interest in our work, Dr. Elliot," Thornton said warmly as they descended to the basement. "Most museum staff prefer to keep their distance from all this technical business." "I find it fascinating," Zoe replied honestly, "especially the theoretical applications of quantum mechanics to historical preservation." Thornton's eyes sharpened with interest, an unusual perspective for an archivist. "I've been told I have an unconventional approach." As the team set up their equipment, Zoe watched carefully for the silver case Edison had described. She spotted it being unpacked by one of Thornton's assistants, who placed it at the center of their apparatus. "Dr. Thornton," Zoe asked casually, "would you mind explaining what you're hoping to find with this survey?" "For my reports, of course." "Of course, dear." Thornton gave her a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "We're measuring naturally occurring quantum fluctuations in historical spaces. Museums often have the most interesting readings, all those old objects carrying their own temporal signatures." It was a plausible explanation, and entirely false, Zoe knew. "Fascinating," she replied. "May I?" She gestured toward the equipment. "Please, look all you want. Just try not to touch anything. Some of the calibrations are quite delicate." As Thornton turned to instruct her team, Zoe circled the apparatus, waiting for her moment. It came when an alarm from another piece of equipment drew everyone's attention. In that brief window, she slipped the stylus into a port on the silver case, just as Edison had instructed. The device accepted it with a soft click, its blue lights briefly flickering to gold before returning to normal. No one seemed to notice. For 3 days, Thornton's team conducted their survey, growing increasingly frustrated as their equipment failed to locate whatever they were seeking. Zoe maintained her helpful facade while secretly monitoring their progress. On the final day, as the team packed up to leave, Thornton approached Zoe privately. "You know," she said conversationally, "it's the strangest thing. Our readings suggest temporal activity occurred here recently, but we can't pinpoint the source." Her gaze was penetrating. "You wouldn't happen to know anything about that, would you, Dr. Elliot?" Zoe met her gaze steadily. "Time is full of mysteries, Dr. Thornton. Some are meant to be preserved, not solved." A flicker of recognition passed across Thornton's face. "He found you already, didn't he?" Edison always was impatient. She sighed. "You've interfered with my equipment somehow." "I've protected my timeline," Zoe corrected. "And his." To her surprise, Thornton laughed softly. "Oh, my dear, you misunderstand. I'm not trying to erase Edison's work. I'm trying to ensure it happens. The very fact that he exists to oppose me is proof that some of my interventions must succeed." Zoe frowned. "That doesn't make any sense." "Temporal mechanics rarely does," Thornton replied. "But consider this. What if Edison's timeline and mine are not competitors but companions? Different branches of the same tree, both necessary." Before Zoe could respond, one of Thornton's assistants called her away. As she left, the older woman pressed something into Zoe's hand, a small device that looked like a memory card. "He'll know what to do with this," Thornton said cryptically. "The game is more complex than either of you realize." That night, after everyone had gone, Zoe returned to the spot where the doorway had appeared. The pocket watch remained silent, its hands moving normally, offering no clue. "Come on, Edison," she whispered. Find me again." As if in answer, the air before her shimmered, and a vertical line of golden light appeared, widening slowly into a doorway. But instead of the rooftop garden, she saw Edison's laboratory, and Edison himself, looking both exhausted and elated. "It worked," he exclaimed. Thornton's team left empty-handed, and the quantum bridge stabilized. Zoe stepped through without hesitation. "I have so many questions, starting with why Thornton gave me this." She held up the memory card. Edison's eyebrows shot up. "She gave you that willingly?" "She said you'd know what to do with it. She also said something strange about your timeline and hers being companions, not competitors." Edison took the card carefully. "That actually explains a lot. My calculations kept showing paradoxical results, as if multiple futures were simultaneously valid." He inserted the card into a console, and holographic displays sprang to life around them, showing complex temporal maps. "She's right," he breathed, studying the data. "Our timelines aren't in opposition. They're parallel developments, each with their own purpose." He looked at Zoe with newfound wonder. "And you, Dr. Zoe Elliott, are apparently the nexus point." "Me? Why?" "According to this data, your work preserving and studying temporal anomalies becomes the foundation for both my research and Thornton's. Different applications of the same fundamental discoveries." Zoe struggled to process this. "So by trying to stop her, we might have prevented both futures from happening." "Possibly," Edison admitted. "But thanks to your quick thinking with the stylus, we've actually created a third option." He pointed to a new branch emerging from the temporal map. "A hybrid timeline where information flows freely between time periods, but physical interference is limited. Is that a good thing?" Edison's smile was radiant. "It's a beautiful thing. It means we can continue to communicate across time without risking paradoxical damage." He hesitated, then added softly, "It means I can continue to see you." "How exactly does that work?" Zoe asked, hope rising in her chest. "I can't exactly commute between 2025 and 2054 every day." "No," Edison agreed, "but we can establish regular connection points, stable bridges that open at predetermined intervals." He reached for her hands, and this time the golden threads connecting them were bright and unmistakable. "It's not a conventional relationship, but then we're not exactly conventional people." Zoe laughed. "An archivist and a quantum physicist from different centuries. Definitely not conventional." The laboratory around them hummed with energy as Edison pulled her closer. "So what do you say, Dr. Elliott? Are you willing to explore this unconventional timeline with me?" Zoe thought about her life 6 months ago, the lonely nights in the basement, cataloging forgotten treasures, yearning for something more. She thought about the extraordinary days since then, how her world had expanded beyond anything she could have imagined. "On one condition," she said, smiling up at him. "Name it." "No more no into or I signs. I think we've established they don't work on me anyway." Edison laughed, the sound echoing across time itself. "Deal." As they sealed their agreement with a kiss, the golden threads of light surrounding them pulsed and strengthened, weaving their separate timelines into something new and unprecedented, a bridge between worlds that neither time nor space could sever. In the Metropolitan Science Museum, a new exhibit opened the following month. Connections: How the Past Shapes the Future. At its center, behind glass, sat a pair of identical antique pocket watches, their hands moving in perfect synchronization despite being separated by display panels. Only Zoe Elliott knew that every evening at precisely 11:42 p.m., both watches would momentarily stop, and somewhere in the museum, a door would open between worlds, allowing two people who defied probability to continue writing their impossible story together. The universe, it seemed, had a sense of humor after all. And perhaps, as Edison had suggested on that first extraordinary night, the most valuable discoveries really did come from taking wrong turns. Retriclaude can make mistakes. Please double-check responses.